Chapter 4. Winter. Intergalactic Dating Profile Match #73761. Lewis. Planet of Origin Cigarette Tree. Species Glandespot. Age 1704. Local planet dating. Eyes round. Skin colour purple. Characteristics: has all learned teeth. Likes travel, people, jokes. Favourite colour maroon. Most likely to accidentally set self alight without meaning to. Elspeth. Planet of origin Mechion 7. Species Mechion. Age 37, oldest part. Eyes detachable. Skin colour metallic. Characteristics: bowed hair. Likes travel, people, giggling. Favourite colour grey. Most likely to laugh so much that it falls off. It was winter. Even though on the planet I had just left it had been the height of summer. Weird. The space shuttle had been delayed due to some alien invention called snow and was running behind time. How thrilling. Snow. I'd never actually seen snow before, except on the intergalactic bulletins. I mean, my planet had 3 suns. We didn't even have seasons in the normal sense. The Earth was well cool, in every meaning of the word. No wonder my sprob mother told me, Lewis, wrap up warm, it's an alien planet, and aliens don't do sunshine, that's why they're all so pale, not purple with roulet-coloured spots like us. I had considered all those 11-2 blankets she had given me excessive, but actually I found I needed all of them, and more. After another delay, and figuring that I had more time on my hands than I was expecting, I got the mini holograph out of my bag again, and stared again at the metallic figure waving back shyly at me, my heart beating a samba inside me. We'd really hit it off since I'd tentatively sent off my ID to ID. I'd really fallen for her outside beauty, the way the sunlight shone off her metallic bone structure and lit up the colour of her eye circuitry. Well, she was fantastically creative and brilliantly clever, perhaps the smartest person I'd ever met, even for a Mechion. I didn't know why she'd ever agreed to be with an overgrown, clumsy clandesprod like me, but she seemed bemused by my constant stream of bad jokes that always seemed to make her smile, even though nobody else ever found them funny, and within a single conversation it had already felt like the most important thing in the universe to make her laugh, because that laugh felt like the sun coming out. All those years in the entertainment clan had really paid off at last, I thought, but of course it was more than that too. Back home though, on Ziggurat 3, that had misfired on me. Everyone expected me to be on all the time, to cheer them up and make them feel better about their own lives, even when mine was miserable and lonely. Not Elspeth though. She brought out a serious side I didn't even know I had. She was a really good listener too. Most Mechions were, I suppose. It was all in the circuitry. They were programmed to listen, she had told me once, to observe. Clandesprods never had much time to observe anything. We were always busy doing something, fretting about a past that wasn't likely to ever to be repeated, and preparing for a future that never quite seemed to come. Mechions always seemed to be content to live in the present, and never look back twice when things became complicated. They were up to, 8 home planets was it now? Each one colonised to be better, bigger, more suited to them than the last. I wondered how far Elspeth had had to travel from Mechion 8, and whether she too was wrapped up warm like me. Oh no, I suppose not. Mechions didn't tend to have temperature gauges and never felt the cold. She had told me that on one of our first sky calls together. To think that we had been talking to each other for 6 months now, we were finally going to get the chance to meet in person. It was so exciting, and being a curious clandesprod, I had so many questions. I wondered what she would feel like in my arms when we hugged, what she would taste like when we kissed, what it would be like to finally do other things. I'd imagined these thoughts and more for so long that I couldn't believe the time was actually here, or nearly here. It was still an hour to go after all. Out the shuttle window, I saw a spaceship lining up near to us and wondered if that was hers. It looked like a Mechion shuttle, but then that wasn't exactly a surprise. They were all Mechion shuttles the universe used, powered by Clandesprog crystal technology. To think all those years before interstellar contact they designed the perfect ships but had no fuel to power them, whereas we had the energy source but had never had any means to leave our planet. It had been the perfect partnership, the coming together of Clandesprons and Mechions that together had helped each other and others and travel all the way around the known universe, even though separately we were both grounded. I hope that this was a sign. After all, Elspeth had become my fuel since meeting her, in more ways than one, so it seemed symbolic that we should be travelling so far to see each other, to this strange planet called Earth. The ID site encouraged us to meet on a mutual planet halfway between ours, and even paid for our visit there out of our fees, plus one more visit on each of our homeworlds. It would have been much easier to teleport, of course, but, well, I couldn't afford that, and even the 7 hours spent at this shuttle seemed like a miracle to me. I kept thinking that we weren't really moving at all, that it was all some elaborate practical joke, that some unseen force was moving all the scenery around so that it looked as if we were moving, but really we were standing still. Flying all this way seemed so unlikely to someone who'd barely ever made it out of their cave. Not Elspeth, though. She was much more intergalactically wise than me. She'd even warned me that our shuttles would probably end up being late. I tapped out a quick message to her. Another delay, sorry. Some alien weather phenomenon. So exciting though. See you soon. A message flashed back immediately.
Ditto. Some sort of frozen liquid is falling as precipitation, I hear. See you momentarily. Squeak!
I'd never heard a Mechion squeak before. I wasn't entirely sure if I liked it. Another text came through.
Sorry, did I just squeak out loud? It's a human thing, apparently. I thoroughly researched our planet of origin before travelling up here. I think some of it rubbed off on me. TTFN, which I think stands for Technology Tolerating for Nowadays.
Oh, research, I like it, I texted. Clandesprods just tend to wing things. I can see I'm going to learn a lot from you. See you soon, Sprod willing. Soon our shuttle had arrived and I got off, joining the throng of intergalactic society as we waited for admittance.
Ha!
Shouted a Belobrat.
Don't they know who I am? This upstart planet should be pleased to have me here.
Agreed, erupted Maggrumph. These places will run so late, mate. And Agrosian agreed.
Get this queue with the get moving.
Emerasianar next to be mused.
Odd how we can travel several quadrillion miles in a few minutes in the blink of an eye, and spend half the journey time trying to get out of one room to another.
The Dewsbury giant headed up to the snack bar and came back with a 4-course banquet, which he proceeded to eat in line. Up ahead of us, a Glabdahardit was shaking with fright at being scanned, and eventually ran off to the conveyor belt to join his luggage, next to the sleeping Habridat that was going round and round the carousel. I also found myself dodging the shifty Belobrat, who was trying to sell us duty-free goods, colognes and candles that were impossible to transport safely, and nobody wanted, with or without tax. Even behind all these grumbling and nervous commuters, though, there was a palpable buzz of excitement, of all of us communally having freed the restrictive bonds of our own planet for a new world. Intergalactic space travel was still so new and exciting that it hadn't quite become mundane yet. While I was trapped in this queue, Earthlings really knew how to queue. We never had that on Ziggurat 3. I looked at the throng of species in all shapes and sizes and colours, and wondered what everybody's individual story was that had brought them here, to this exact point in time. I wondered if any of it was as exciting as the story that had brought me here. Mine, though, was the best motive in the universe. Love. Finally, after a worrying moment when it seemed as if my runaway suitcase was having more adventures than I was free to go. I stopped just short of the main door, momentarily scared, as if I'd just turned into a Glabdahardit. So far ours had been a long-distance romance, and though it had worked better than I had ever dreamed of, this was the moment when it would change into being an actual physical relationship. Would it actually work, this very different combination of cultures? Would we have this chemistry in person? Would she even recognise who I was after so many hours of just being a disembodied head on a screen? Well, actually, I'd been a disembodied bottom for the longest part, until Elspeth had gently told me I was using my device wrong. She was so smart on technological matters. Would I even recognise her? I reflected again on why it was I had been called to come halfway around the universe, that something other beings seemed to find on the doorstep. But that was all right. I would gladly have travelled much further into the blackness of space for the one that was right for me. Steeling myself from my nerves, I walked through the doors. and straight into the beaming smile of Elspeth.
Our shuttle just landed ahead of yours,
She said.
It's so good to meet you, boyfriend.
I still got a shudder down my spine when she called me that. The nice sort, though, not the ones like I got with COVID or monkeypox. You too, girlfriend, I smiled, before picking her up in my arms and waving her round my head. Oopsie whoopsie, sorry, I said as I reached up to retrieve her from the lights overhead. It's a Clandesbrot custom, but we do it in nice airy caves, not in small rooms like this one. How do these humans cope with such tiny ceilings?
That's all right,
said Elspeth, retrieving wires from her head and floating down to the ground on a hover shoe.
You meant well. Wait a minute, while I'm up here,
She got out a toolkit.
I fixed the fluorescent lighting so it doesn't flicker anymore. Every Earth light seems to do that, I've noticed.
I took her by the hand. Let's start again. A pleasure to meet you. You know you're even more gorgeous in the flesh. I glanced down at her gleaming metallic body. I mean in the robotics, I corrected myself. That steel casing really brings out your eyes. Elspeth laughed, clutching at her arms as they began to come loose.
Thank you. I wasn't sure how the purple spots would work with your curl pattern, but they bring out your eyes a treat.
I reached out with my face, ready for a kiss. I've come a long way for this. I'm going to remember every second of it.
Oh,
Said Elspeth, alarmed.
wait just a...
Ow, I said, backing off in alarm. I think my lips are on fire.
Sorry,
Said Elspeth apologetically.
I didn't have time to warn you. I think one of my circuits is loose. Does it hurt awfully?
Loch of the leaf, I lisped, trying to feel the front of my face again.
At least we know for certain there's a spark between us.
Giggled Elspeth, taking me by the hand.
Well, I guess we'll never forget the day we met. It was also the day we both nearly got rushed to hospital.
I wouldn't forget this day ever, I said. Whatever happened, I'm so lucky.
Even though I just set your mouth alight and you had to travel quadrillions of miles.
Asked Elspeth, with a light robotic laugh that always set my heart pounding.
The other Mechions would say that was illogical.
She looked up at me with her metallic eyes.
Are we mad for doing this?
Oh yes, I nodded. Positively. But since when was love ever sensible? Elspeth roared at this, so hard that one of her legs fell off.
Sorry,
She said quickly.
I'm trying to do something about that. I think it's loose. Mechions aren't meant to do this much laughing. I think it's affecting my circuitry. You do say the funniest things sometimes, Lewis. Although conversely, losing limbs randomly is really funny too.
I helped her screw her leg back on. It's not just me who says that about love. The Clandesbrats say it too. And other things. They think I should have stayed with my own kind. My own clan, I say. But they're so stuck in the past. There's a whole intergalactic universe out there. Why settle for something less when my heart pulls me all the way out here so strongly? I feel the pull of you, and it's stronger than any gravitational field I have ever had. Suddenly her eyes turned into hearts. I didn't know you could do that, I laughed.
Wait,
Said Elspeth.
what just happened?
She peered into a mirror.
I didn't know I could do that either.
She glanced over at me.
And you? Are you a different colour now? You're glowing.
Me, I said, glancing at the mirror too. Why, so I am. I always heard folk tales that Clandesbrats could glow when they were in love. I never knew they were true.
They say love changes you.
Added Elspeth.
I always thought it was hyperbole, an exaggeration caused by a fundamental misunderstanding of social constructs. But now I see it's all true.
She looked up at me.
What else are we going to discover about ourselves by being together, do you think?
Lots, I said. But first we'd better discover more about this planet we're visiting. We went outside and breathed in the air of a new planet for the first time. Suddenly coughing from all the archaic pollution, we looked around us.
Is this ground meant to be white?
Asked Elspeth, puzzled.
In the pictures, Earth always looks such a green planet.
She thought.
Apart from the bits with the blue, of course. All the bits with the muddy brown.
Hey, I said, is this that Earth thing called snow that was stopping us from reaching each other?
Why, I think there's a highly logical conclusion, Lewis.
Said Elspeth, and she stuck her tongue out to catch a drop.
Oh, crystallised H2O,
She said.
fascinating.
The snow began to corrode her tongue, and the cold stuck it to her face, so that she had to tug it away, causing her to fall into me and knock me to the ground.
Oakley Wilkley.
She laughed.
I guess now you know what it feels like, Lewis. I'm turning into you.
I laughed so hard I felt I knew what it was like to have a limb detach.
I have to analyse this weather development fully later,
said Elspeth, and she got a jar out of her pocket and began to pack samples. You'll never get those through customs, I joked. I had to eat all my sandwiches before they let me on the plane. I didn't know spaghetti constituted such a risk, especially given the earth cooking we've tried, which is a very real threat. Honestly, hot dog buns with icing. We hailed an earth-tacked vehicle known as a taxi. The ride was very bumpy, and I found myself feeling most queasy. Sorry, I said. That's what comes of having to eat all my sandwiches, and then taking a really turbulent flight that got knocked around in the snow, not to mention my excitement. To think it looked so benign on the ground.
You changed colour again,
said Elspeth, alarmed.
Are you alright?
No problem, I squeaked in a small voice which made her laugh. And I stuck my head out the window instead. Oopsie whoopsie, I confessed as a passing vehicle swerved to avoid us. Soon, though, I was feeling better, and we made our way to the offices at the ID headquarters, where we were greeted by a smiling human named Jusira. I reached out a hand in greeting, and the next thing I knew, I was retrieving her from another light fitting. These humans have low ceilings.
Oopsie whoopsie,
said Elspeth with a giggle.
Honestly, Lewis, I can't take you anywhere, never mind halfway across the known universe. You'll make me lose my head one of these days if I laugh any harder.
I grinned thinly back at her. I wasn't even trying to be funny that time. Sorry, I said to Jusira, settling her down on the floor. That's all right, she said, dusting herself down. You made it, our first ever intergalactic dating couple. Though we have been used as a honeymoon destination by other species, we're hoping that soon we'll be able to take couples to our actual moon, but we haven't finished terraforming it yet.
Wait,
said Elspeth.
we're your first, but you've been going years.
Jusira's face fell. Business has been a bit slow.
But your site is always so busy,
said Elspeth.
I check the traffic statistics of your IP address every day.
Why? Asked Jusira. Elspeth looked around her.
For fun.
She blushed an oddly human shade of red underneath all her circuitry.
Is that bad?
Not at all, said Jusira quickly. Anyway, yes, there's always been interest in the site, but to be honest with you, 90% of it is Belobrat saying, hey ladies, or hey dudes to any species that will listen, and then showing pictures of their private parts without asking. I don't know why. There are lots of other websites that allow them to do that sort of thing. As far as I know, no one else have ever taken up our offer of free travel to a different planet for a first date. Most couples get scared before they ever get to that point, and not just for Glabdahardits either. You really are both awfully brave for going on this big adventure, for coming all this way, to meet someone who is effectively a stranger. Not everyone could do it. There was no way I couldn't, I said. Not for something as important as love. Nobody makes me feel the way Elspeth does, all tingly inside.
Same here,
added the Mechion.
When I first started talking to Lewis, I thought I'd developed another short circuit, but no, that tingle was real. I knew he was the one.
Jusira smiled. You never had any doubts?
It did seem illogical,
added Elspeth.
I started wondering if Lewis here was going to turn out to be an axe-murderer who was fooling me by being nice. But I thought no one could be as endearingly clumsy as he is. If he ended up trying to kill me, he'd probably miss.
Same here, I added. I wondered if I'd be kidnapped and held against my will for the rest of my days by a robotic assassin. I thought if I was, then what a way to go. Jusira smiled. Let's hope that doesn't happen. No, don't worry, all our clients are specially scanned by a Malaysian art on our payroll called Craigslist for signs of instability. You're just a cute couple going about your cute business. And why not? Love comes in all shapes and sizes, that's our motto. She looked up at the broken office light fittings. And strength. Jusira ushered us to the top room of the headquarters, which was just above her office. A staircase took us to a separate building that was our Airbnb. It was literally floating in the air.
Invisible struts in a gravitational field distorter,
nodded Elspeth, impressed. Oopsie whoopsie! I found myself tripping up the invisible steps and landing on top of my girlfriend. Lewis, she giggled, wait till we're alone before you leap on top of me, please. Anyway, said Jusira without batting an eyelid, it's so wonderful to have guests at last. This poor apartment has waited ages for someone to use it. Have fun, kids. She turned to go. Don't forget, recycling.
We're alone at last,
said Elspeth and I at the same moment, the same thought crossing our minds as we rushed over to each other, and we met on the magnificent balcony up in the sky, overlooking the earth. Or at least we did till Elspeth fell over.
Sorry,
I said, curling my tail.
Never mind. Oh,
said Elspeth.
What with all those nights of being talking heads on the Universal, I'd forgotten you had a tail.
We tried again.
Sorry,
said Elspeth as I got an electric shock, backed away into a wall, and fell over into the waste paper basket head first.
I'd forgotten that I still had my protective electronic armour on.
That's okay, I said, feeling the extra bumps that had just arrived on my head. What with all those nights of being talking heads on the Universal, I'd forgotten about the static electricity that was building up inside your body. It really suits your latest hairdo, where all your hair sticks out on end. Elspeth giggled.
Your hair is doing the same now, Louise. I rather like it. Now let's try again.
Tentatively, we both went into snuggle again, this time without misadventure. Those next few seconds of actually being able to hold each other in our arms after so many nights of helpless longing were the greatest moments of my life. I still remember them across the years with a clarity that quite scares me, and which I never fully registered at the time, every single moment recorded in great detail, the sounds, the smells, and the sights of a new planet beckoning me just over her head, though in this moment I only have eyes for Elspeth. As long as I have lived, as much as I have seen, my heart has never wanted to move on from that moment, so neither has part of my memory, safely cocooned there for all eternity, so I can go back and visit it whenever I want. Then we kissed, and I truly knew that my life would never be the same again.
No tongues,
murmured Elspeth sleepily and a little sadly.
Just in case it interferes in my circuitry. Oh, I remember to bring protection,
she said, breaking away.
For later. I wasn't sure if we'd have time to go to the chemist on this planet.
Oh, I blushed. Clandestrods aren't one of those races that needs contraception. Well, we're ready for children who just take a tablet of crushed crystals. I don't think we've reached that stage yet, have we?
No, silly,
said Elspeth. Protection for you.
To say you're getting an accidental electric shock when you know, dangling wires.
The sentence broke off into a flurry of giggles. I never knew Mechions could laugh until I met you, I said. To think if I hadn't joined the ID, to spend the rest of my life not knowing that, or that the grass on this planet was green, not pink, or the sky was blue, not orange.
I do giggle a lot,
confessed Elspeth.
It's good to laugh. My kind don't do enough of it. They think me strange for it. You know, it's good to be with a different species, visiting a different culture. I've always loved the effervescent ways for the clandestrods have to laugh, to entertain, to be more than merely practical. I'm so glad I met someone from the entertainment line.
There's a story that when I was born, my father said with those legs I wasn't going to make it anywhere else, I replied sheepishly, to which she laughed again, catching her eyes as they became loose and rolled out of her head. I worry you'll get as fed up at my clumsiness as my own kind do. It's very wearing on me. I can see it would be on someone else, I confess, looking away and trying not to meet her eyes.
Nonsense,
she scoffed.
You're the most entertaining person I've ever met, and I do so love to be entertained.
She looked away sadly.
But you'll probably get annoyed by me in time. Everyone on Mechion thinks me far too silly and juvenile.
Never. It amazes me how grown up you are, I said, as she giggled again. Backwards this time. And her ears fell off.
Aren't we lucky, Lewis?
Said Elspeth, picking them up again.
If we'd have been born before international travel, we'd never have had the chance to meet, and we'd have been stuck settling with someone of our own kind who would have misunderstood us and got bored of us. Instead, we get to be with each other. More species should travel and experience different cultures. It's not good to stay on one tiny insular patch of the planet, and there's a whole universe out there to explore.
Exactly, I said, warming up to one of my favourite subjects. None of my species move very far out of their cave at all, except a handful of clandestrods from the other explorer clan. And I think most of them got lost when they do it. It's so frustrating to me when there's so much out there to do, to see, to experience. After all, there are so many people confined to their sick beds, trapped, who can't go anywhere at all, who would give their set of spare limbs to be able to do what we do, to travel the universe. That's why I was VID's first intergalactic subscriber. I'm 0000001 on my registration card, even if it took me a few years to find you, the one who was perfect for me.
That's so funny.
Elspeth laughed, clutching at her left foot so that it didn't fall off.
I was 000000002. I was most put out not to be number one, and I wondered who it might be. We could have met on our first day together.
We giggle, and I hear that precious laugh again. The one I love hearing more than any other sound in the universe.
You know, Lewis,
said Elspeth, clutching me in the darkness.
I've been through so many difficult things. I've been very sick, with so many complaints. They tried to shut me down, you know, when I was little. A one-off combination of misfiring circuits and a loose connection, apparently, which is why my limbs won't attach themselves properly, and why my neurons leave me craving humour as much as I do. They said I was a malfunctioning robot, that I was too illogical, that I might be dangerous, that I would never find a future and make your aid.
You? Dangerous? I said aghast. But you're my rock, my safety net, my protector. Who said that? Why, I'll show them. I'll take them apart circuit by circuit. I'll drain their batteries. I'll stick their cylinders on back to front.
Everybody,
said Elspeth sadly.
They've never seen anyone quite like me before. They've never even heard a robot laugh before. Oh, don't look so sad, Lewis. It's all right,
said Elspeth, smiling.
I'm at peace with it now. They don't know any better. Sometimes it takes a newborn baby with a kind of vision of the future to change the way the world works. And sometimes people fight against that, because it didn't fit how they thought things were. But in my philosophy, it's always best to be kind, even if people hate you for it. Sometimes, though, when I'm alone, I think that they're right. That my being different makes me warped, damaged, impossible to love. Especially on a planet where people don't love, not openly.
She turned round and stroked my face.
That's why meeting you was so special. No one ever understood me before you. I was so eager to join the idea, to believe that other beings out there would understand me if my own culture couldn't. And I found you, the first time. I'm so lucky.
Oh, Elspeth, I said, hugging her tight. You're not damaged. You're the most perfect creature I've ever met. I love your laugh, your emotions, the way you're so irrepressibly you. What do they know, the stuck-up tin cans?
I just wanted you to know,
whispered Elspeth.
Because, you know, with what comes next, when you come to my planet to visit, if you still want to come.
Of course I want to come, I half yelled. I'll show those busybodies what for.
No,
said Elspeth quickly.
Not like that. Gently. My folks don't like displays of emotion.
I understand, I smiled. I'm really not so different from you. My cave clan doesn't understand me either. My curiosity, my clumsiness, my serious side. Everyone in my cave on Ziggurat is all smiles all the time. It's exhausting. I feel I've spent all my life smiling back without ever quite knowing why. I turned to Elspeth. But you allow me to indulge my serious side. After all those nights of talking, you know me better than anyone else who ever lived.
Of course,
smiled Elspeth.
By Mechion standards, you're not serious at all. You're silly. But I love the fact that you could be both. The most serious, silly person I ever met.
And you, I returned. You're the silliest person I ever met. I'm the loveliest. She sat on my lap, snuggling her head on my shoulder.
How lucky we are,
she murmured sleepily, before falling asleep.
To have found each other, like lights in the dark, and to think we get to spend the rest of our lives together.
Yes, I said, putting my arm around her as I stared out at all the humans going about their business. I want to scream through the rooftops how wonderful this gift is, and how everyone else should experience it. Just look at those humans going about their day, for instance. This species doesn't know what it's missing, even if it did open the ID headquarters. I peered more closely. Goodness, those legs. Humans are such a weird design. How do you think they work? But my sweetie pie was asleep, so instead I just let her rest, and gazed dreamily into her eyes instead, only slightly alarmed when she began to snore, just like a vacuum cleaner. What have you got in here? I said, as I lugged our suitcases out of the lift and up to the stairs. Dewsbury giant hippos?
Oh, no,
said Elspeth, rushing over.
you weren't meant to carry them all the way.
But you're so small, I said helplessly. I'm the ungainly, oversized one in this relationship. It's my job to do it. Besides, I'd do anything to help you.
That mean I could do this at the press of a button, silly,
she said, and the bags levitated into the air and waltzed through our door and into our bedroom. Well, I never, I said, panting. That's clever.
That's the one I've got in here. Well, it's a project I've been working on for a while now. I like to tinker with it in bed. I hope that's all right.
Sure, I said, and I meant it too. But I have to confess I was rather alarmed when Elspeth unpacked a visor, gloves, welding equipment and various electronics from her bag.
Now let's go explore quickly.
Elspeth beamed at me. I didn't know Mechions could get so excited either, I laughed, as she pulled me by the hands.
I'm not meant to get excited,
explained Elspeth.
It's not the done thing on that planet. We're meant to keep up a conceited mannered calm at all times. It's the dignified thing amongst my species to keep our upper lips welded into place and be reserved about everything.
She leaned over to me and whispered,
But none of my kind are here. I can be exactly who I want with you. Being with you has freed me, at last, to be myself.
It's my turn to laugh. I was just thinking the same. How odd that it should take getting to know someone else to truly understand yourself.
Now come on,
said Elspeth, tugging hard.
Let's explore this weird planet.
Do you think they keep these decorations up all year round? I asked Elspeth, admiring all the bunting as we made our way round the neighbourhood.
Maybe,
nodded Elspeth.
Humans are such irrational, illogical creatures. I mean, whichever species would think of putting up a tree indoors.
They never, I said, laughing. But to my shock, I saw she was right.
And look at all those parcels underneath them. I wonder what's in them.
Never mind that, I said, looking at the window next door. There's a collection of that weather that fell on the ground. Indoors. Shaped and wearing clothes, and with vegetables randomly inserted into it. Do you think it's a feeding table for glad to hold it?
How odd,
said Elspeth, turning her head on its side in order to have a better look.
I've never seen shaped weather indoors before. What a strange alien planet this is. And what are those socks hanging up next to the heat source? That seems dangerous. And very human,
laughed Elspeth.
Oh well, it's good to adapt ourselves to local customs. We have a bit of money left in your ID fund. Let's join in.
So we did. The shopkeeper seemed most surprised to see us, and even more surprised when we bought up half his shop, including the displays. He was most surprised, though, I think, when Elspeth got out a machine to turn off the gravity, and everything in the room began to hover around the room, including him. Get out, he called from the ceiling. So we shrugged our shoulders and walked off, with our array of snowmen, trees, chimneys, stockings and assorted goods behind us. I've heard about this fake crossness, I said, consulting a book. It's an Earth custom that happens once a year, when families get together for festive holidays and have a row, even though they're meeting up for pleasure. Only it seems to happen twice in this country for some reason, a month or so apart.
How nice,
said Elspeth, nodding to the man gripping to the light fittings.
Thank you for making us feel a part of your quaint little Earth custom.
We made our way back to our Airbnb and looked at our goods.
A fireplace over here, I think,
said Elspeth.
Next to the snow creature. The reindeer goes on the roof. The tree, I think, ought to stick out the window. It's a bit too big for our room. I wonder what these baubles are hanging off it.
These earthlings seem to like their food, I said. Perhaps they're edible. Ooh, crunchy. I said as I tried one. Bit glassy for my taste, but better than the beans on toast we tried at the local cafe.
I think it all looks rather nice,
said Elspeth, grinning as she took me by the arms.
I rather like this Earth custom. I wonder what it means.
The birth of some baby, I said, consulting my book.
Wow,
said Elspeth, her eyes opening wide.
They do this for the birth of every baby on this planet. No wonder the Earth is so economically inconvenienced. Well, here's to you, baby.
We raised our glasses upwards. There's something else here too, I say, consulting the Dummy's Guide to Earth, about it being based on a pagan ritual when this half of the globe are at their furthest extent from the sun. That this day is meant to represent hope about being halfway through the dark, that light will come back and bring with it joy, peace and understanding.
That sounds like a good festival,
nodded Elspeth.
It kind of sounds like us. You brought me light in the darkest time, Lewis, and reminded me how good life can be. Well, may you find love and joy and peace, little infant, and may all earthlings feel the same at this time of year.
That seems a very earth custom, I add, finding the lights in the darkness, the belief in uncertainty, the hope and the helplessness. All this time the other species have been rather looking down on the earth, but they got some things really right. Being here with you, after the life I've had, trapped in a clan that doesn't really understand me, it really does feel as though I am halfway out of the dark. Elspeth reached over and kissed me on the nose.
More than halfway, I think. After all, we found each other in a sea full of quad-saloons of beings. That was the hard bit. Staying together should be easy.
I felt a shiver go down my spine. Would it be that easy? I rather like Christmas, I said as I hugged Elspeth, and we gazed warmly at our tree. It's fun. Want to know about something else I read in the guidebook?
Yes, please,
smiled Elspeth, giggling. The thing we thought was a weed, it's actually mistletoe, and apparently earthlings do something very special under the mistletoe.
Oh,
said Elspeth.
What?
This, I said, turning my head towards her and kissing her passionately. I really like this custom, Elspeth murmured, kissing me back. I like that custom a lot, I said, as we paused for breath for a few minutes later. Good job she didn't have any lungs, and the mine are so large, I thought to myself. That's my favourite one so far.
What else do we do?
Asked Elspeth. Well, I said, consulting my guidebook, apparently we stick a candle in an orange, overeat lots of food, and get sick, watch an earth lady in a big hat give something called a Christmas message, and moan about how all the television channels are showing repeats, just like last Christmas.
We could do that,
agreed Elspeth. I'll start on the candle now, I said. I think we've got an orange. Oopsie whoopsie, I added as I tripped over.
Don't worry, dear,
said Elspeth, immediately on the scene with the fire extinguisher.
I should have thought that might happen.
You're always there for me, keeping me safe, I sighed gratefully, as the smoking embers of the curtains parted enough for me to see her. I love you so much.
I love you too,
said Elspeth.
Life's always an adventure with you. Do you think we'll get to celebrate every future Christmas together?
I hope so, I muttered dreamily. And the good thing is that as our calendars has 1,000 Earth days in them, we get to have 3 a year.
One last thing, dear,
said Elspeth sleepily in between the braying.
Where do you suppose we're meant to put the donkey?
The week went by far too quickly, in a blur of sightseeing, a combination of the new that seems ridiculously exciting and the familiar that seems so natural it just has to be right. I love the city and the planet we had landed in. When we first signed up to the ID, the two of us had filled in a lengthy questionnaire about our perfect vacation to decide which planet we most wanted to meet on. Out of 11 options, some planets were too cold or too hot. Agrosi was considered by both of us to be a bit far away. Neither of us fancied spending our time together hiding under a table surrounded by mass squeaking, so glad the hardest was out. We didn't really fancy the pomposity of Mraz, or the gruffness of Maggrumph. Habridats sounded a bit dull. Helisphere filled with too many nosy Belobrats who would have interrogated us for hours at customs. For a time I had seriously considered Camalosian to my list of vacation planets, but as it turned out filling in all the paperwork was a nightmare. At the time of filling in the form, I just had a big lunch, so Duzius seemed out too. No, there could only be one planet for the two of us, and that was Earth. It was, after all, the only other planet in the known universe where the civilizations had lived in caves for some of its history, just as we did. Also, the city the headquarters was based in was built on a particularly impressive bed of crystals, something which, as a clandesprod, fascinated me. Just think, all that potential technology humans had barely tapped into, lying underneath the ground, waiting to be used. We went down the crystal mine together, the two of us holding hands and even stealing kisses in the dark as we went under the soil. It was glorious being back in the darkness again, away from the glare of outside light, even if only temporarily. I always felt safe and comfortable inside a hole in the ground, which after all was just like being in a cave, but down instead of sideways. With the only light coming from the crystals shining around us, it was deeply romantic. Well, I knew that as a Mechion, Elspeth's senses were unimpaired underground anyway. Together we held hands over a particularly large batch of magical quartz, and I made a wish that this holiday would never end, that it could go on forever. Elspeth, I knew, had chosen her for similar reasons to me, and also, as she told me later, because she knew she could buy knickknacks and parts more easily for a project she was working on. She bought up a lot from shops and trade shows while I was with her too. Stray bits of metal, spark plugs, fuses, gaskets, wires. I was intrigued and asked her what she wanted them for, but all she did was tell me that it was a surprise, and I'd like it when she was finished, she hoped. We didn't just go shopping though. We travelled all round this fascinating country that seemed so new, yet still so packed with history. We went to visit the Statue of Liberty and Intergalactic Freedom, marvelling at the earth handiwork that brought to life a 10-headed multi-species hybrid statue wearing a crown. We saw Mount Rushmore with its 4.5 heads. They were still busy chiselling out Ronald Trumps from the rock surface after he lost the last election. We visited the Kennedy Space Center and laughed at all the antiquated equipment the humans had before the Mechions came along to help them perfect interstellar travel. We marvelled at the Beige House, where all the important decisions were made, following the silliest of terrorist attacks in the 23rd century. It had apparently used to be white. We gaped at the Grand Canyon, caused by a giant punquake delivered millennia ago, by a joke so amazing that it made the whole ground shake. At least I think that's what it was, having been half distracted by lust during the tour there. We oohed at the ginormous gingerbread man sculpture that had been donated by the Dewsbury Giants, at the antler of the North statue built by the Maggrumph, and squeed at Elgin's Margles, being played under a ginormous table, a gift from the Habridats. The Endurance, Insurgents, Province and Ensconce fountains in Central Park were my favourite though, made out of the local stones rather than the crystals of my world, or the circuitry of Elspeth's. Along the way we took quadzillions of holographic pictures, which seemed like an odd thing to do given how I knew I would never forget a single second of what we were doing, as long as I lived, and my girlfriend had a photographic memory, but were still valuable keepsakes to treasure forever. Better still though was when we went home, back to our Airbnb in the sky. I did nothing more than snuggle, or kiss, or hold hands, or more. In the 6 months we had been talking, I had come to know Elspeth's mind as well as my own, but I had been starved of her body, of her touch, and I stored each physical moment in a bank of memories so that I could retrieve them in the hard days of physical starvation to come. Before much time at all, it had begun to feel normal to hold her, to feel the clang of metal on top of my tail, and my arms always felt empty without her in them, to the point where I counted down the minutes till I could hold her in them again. I fell for her all over again, every night. And sometimes, when we were both in the mood, our bodies joined, fitting perfectly, despite our many wild cultural and size differences, as if we had been made to fit together. I lived for those moments of a naked vulnerability that came from being in each other's arms without clothes, despite my worries about my rouleau spots and her fears over her loose wiring. On those special nights nothing else mattered except the feel of her body next to mine, and I let my fingers memorise every last detail of her body casing, every last weld, every last joint. I had never seen a more beautiful sight than my Elspeth. I had been worried too about whether our conversations would flow as easily in person as they had on the Universal, but if anything it flowed better, because we were reacting to each other in the present and weren't forever waiting for a punchline or replying to 28 points in a row. Present was the word in so many ways. When together we didn't have to dwell on the past or worry about the future, so wrapped up were we in savouring every moment, and it really did feel like a present, this journey, this trip of a lifetime, a gift to be treasured in every way, not least because each time we enjoyed it we got to unwrap each other. Soon the old world of families, clans, jobs, responsibilities of other people fell away to seem like a hazy, crazy dream from long ago, while we soaked ourselves in what lay before us. "I don't want to go home," I said to Elspeth one day as we were snuggling on a sofa and trying hard to stay upright as it tried to eject us, human furniture not being made with a clandestine body in mind. Suddenly panicked that our time was running short. "These have been the best few days of my life."
Me too,
said Elspeth dreamily.
"I want to stay here with you always. But don't worry, we'll see each other soon, silly."
Elspeth smiled, putting her arms round my neck.
"It's my planet next. I'm really looking forward to showing you around."
"I'm looking forward to that more than I can tell you," I said. Is it daft to be looking forward to the next visit so soon, when this one hasn't even ended yet? Elspeth grinned.
It's not very logical of me, but I know what you mean. When we next meet up, we will get to be with each other from the beginning all over again, rather than only have a few days to go, like we do now.
That's true, I grinned. And we'll still have your visit to me after that, but I'm a bit afraid of having you meet my clan. They can be very judgmental about new people, or any people for that matter. But after that, we're on our own. I'm scared. The weight of what we were trying to do hit me suddenly. When I had signed up to the ID, the intention had always been to create a whole new life on a whole new planet with a whole new person. But in my desire to lose myself in a whole new everything, I had forgotten that meant leaving the old life behind as well.
It scares me too,
said Elspeth quietly.
I feel like I'd grab the harlot if I stopped to think about it all. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And we can still do visits after that, even if we have to pay for them. And the more visits we have, the more our lives intertwine around each other, until before you know it, we're living the exact same life, together, and we'll always have the universal, assuming they don't switch the intergalactic broadband off.
I know, I said, comforted. This isn't the end of something at all, is it? This is just the beginning. I'm really sad, but the first stage of the beginning is nearly over, and we won't get to have it again. I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending dread as reality cruelly intruded on us. There were so many things to sort out. Where would we live? What would we do? How would we afford it? Ever since meeting Elspeth, the doubts beat inside my head every time I stopped to think about them, and at times I even wondered if I should have filled the intergalactic dating form in at all. But no, every time I looked at her, I knew Elspeth was my person, and that you only got one person like that, no matter where in the universe they might be. I was just lucky to have been born in the era of intergalactic contact, or I might have looked in vain for my person on Ziggurat 3 forever, not knowing that they were on the other side of the universe the whole time, looking for me. I wondered how many other people in centuries past had missed out on the person they were meant to be with due to an accident of geography, and thanked my lucky stars that for once that unlucky person wasn't me. As doubtful as I was, I wouldn't have missed this for all the world. Any world. Elspeth felt the same, I knew, but she was more practical than me, down to earth, as I think the local expression had it, and liked to occupy her mind and keep busy whenever there was space to fill. Her pockets were always full every time we tried to snuggle, and she was always doing something with her hands, even at the most unlikely moments. Every time she thought I had dropped off, I was away doing something. There she was with a soldering iron. What even is it anyway? I asked Elspeth one night as, from beneath our duvet, her welding equipment lit our room up with sparks.
Oh, it's just a hobby of mine,
said the Mechion. Making sparks? I questioned her.
No, sir.
Elspeth often called me that, but with a nicer tone than when other Clandesprots had used it against me.
I like building things. Do you remember all that copper wire we bought this morning? And those washers and screws? Oh, the last bits I needed for the head. I like making them and giving them to people.
Giving head, I asked. Didn't we do that last night already? A warm memory flowed back to me, despite the quite literal teething problems we'd had finding which bits of our bodies inserted where. Elspeth wallowed me playfully.
Not that sort of giving head, silly. I like to make robots. You do?
I sit up in bed. Hey, that one looks just like you. Elspeth smiled.
I hope so. That's what I was aiming for. She's got my eyes. Literally. Though only my spare pair, of course.
She pressed a button and the robot's eyes blinked on. Hello, Lewis. Nice to meet you. Sort of, said the robot, smiling, exactly the same crooked half-smile as its creator. It held out a hand and giggled. Oh, I said, confused. Why? Elspeth shrugged, adding life-inducing protons and electrons to a new device from a handy pipette.
No reason. Why does anyone take up a hobby? It's just something to do. I like to keep my hands busy. Talking of which, come here, you.
The robot went to copy her. Look, I know I was born on Ziggurat 3, but I'm not sure I'm quite ready for a threesome, I stammered as I backed out the door and found myself in a broom closet.
Come back to bed, Lewis,
said Elspeth.
I didn't mean like that.
She opened the door, clamping down her next peal of laughter as she found me with a mop on my head.
Look, I'm sorry if I surprised you. I didn't know about your personal quirks.
And I didn't know about your personal quarks, I added. I'm not used to sharing my bed with robots. I only want you, not a double of you. Elspeth giggled.
I'm sorry. Look, I've turned it off and put it away now. I finished anyway. This is our last night together for now, so let's snuggle.
Tentatively I reached out to her, wondering suddenly if I'd known her as well as I thought I had. What other secrets had she been keeping from me? Then again, she had always listed robotics as an interest on her detailed dating page, in sentences that I'd learned off by heart. The fact that she hadn't mentioned it since was probably just because it had never had any reason to come up in conversation between us. I felt an odd pang in my heart, though, as I realised that there was a part of this person's life that I didn't know, that I had no access to, that never considered before, despite how close we had become. But that was wrong of me. You couldn't possibly get to know anyone completely after 6 months of talking and 10 days together. Also, hadn't I been granted access to parts of Elspeth which, by her own admission, she had never shared with anyone else before? And it wasn't exactly some great secret that changed anything. So our future shared bed would be full of soldering irons from now on. I could live with that, I thought, as long as I remembered not to sit on them. Still, it surprised me that something would surprise me. So many hours into conversation with someone I thought I knew inside out, literally given that time I had called Elspeth on the Universal in the middle of a monthly spring clean. It wasn't this surprise which surprised me, I realised. It was how many surprises there might be left to come, which couples who moved in together immediately knew about from the beginning and got out of the way early on. Even so, Elspeth felt right in my arms, and I felt right in hers, and all was as it should be. So I quietened my aching heart and went to sleep. The next morning all the robotics had been cleared, as had all of Elspeth's belongings. Somehow this almost made me as sad as her going, as if all the parts of our relationship and all the things we had shared with nobody but each other had been tidied away into a box, to be unpacked only when we got another chance to meet, when we went back to being incomplete again. Elspeth caught me looking sad and hugged me. She was so very sorry to go, she said, but she had a long way to travel and a lot of things to lose. She said that if she hadn't packed everything when I was asleep, she might have been distracted during her last precious moments with me, or lose some body part that meant she could never travel to see me again. She helped me with my much messier, more hurried packing, and we had a last, quieter, sadder breakfast on the balcony, as we'd held hands, gazed at the planet stretching out before us, and vowed to come back to Earth one day. "It is you," I said, suddenly doubtful as I stared into Elspeth's eyes. "You're not that robot that was being built last night." She really was terribly lifelike.
No, silly, it's me,
giggled Elspeth.
Would a robot know how to do this?
She reached for the purple spot on my neck that was a Clandesprod's erogenous zone, and I sank into a wave of ecstasy, my doubts calmed. "No," I agreed. "You're quite right. I know those hands too well. I just want to check something, though." I fiddled about with her wiring and felt her shudder and orgasm in my arms next to me.
Thank you, Lewis,
she said.
Nobody else knows how to do that.
We held each other tight, enjoying our waves of ecstasy. Jasira turned up to say goodbye. We were thankful that she hadn't walked in a few minutes earlier. "Our first intergalactic visitor," she beamed. "It has been such a treat having you here. I hope you had a wonderful time." We both nodded. She turned round and nearly fell over as she stared at the large pile of nuts, bolts and electronics piled up high. "My goodness," she said, surprised. "Somebody's been busy." Before long we were being shown the way back to the shuttle. Elspeth was due to leave before mine, so after one last passionate kiss that made the earthlings around us stare, I found myself forlornly watching her go, the hole in my heart getting bigger and bigger as the shuttle grew smaller and smaller. Even though I had spent 99.999% recurring of my life this way, it felt suddenly so very terribly wrong to be on my own, as if one of my body parts had just rolled under our bed and I was left incomplete. Sadly making my way back to my own shuttle, I counted down the hours till we could be together again. There seemed to be an awful lot of them. 6 rather dull months later, and there I was on Mechion 8, dazzled and a little disorientated by all the bright colours and holographic projections. Such light! Again, so different to my own planet, and yet very different to what things had been like on the Earth too. I was to learn later that this was the Mechion's Michaelmas, halfway between the peak of their summer and their winter, when their planet was mid-equinox and the nights started to get shorter.
There you are!
Ah, cried Elspeth, flinging herself into my arms. It had been another very hazardous trip, full of turbulence, and she darted out the way quickly, holding out a sick bag for me.
I came prepared this time.
She grinned as I waved goodbye to my lunch. Sorry, I sniffed. That wasn't the romantic reunion I'd been planning. Scooping her up into my arms, I added, but this was, and gave her a long overdue smooch. I also held out an empty bouquet of flower stalks. These were meant to be for you, but I'm afraid I was sat on the shuttle next to a Dewsbury giant who ate them when I wasn't looking.
They're sweet.
Elspeth gushed and took me by the hand.
Come over here and meet the folks.
These are my parental units, and these are my brothers.
Suddenly Elspeth was joined by 4 Mechions of various heights. They all looked a little bit like her, with just a few different parts added to their faces here and there. Their expressions, however, weren't like my Elspeth's at all. Nice to meet you, I said, holding out my hand to the robotic mother. How are you?
I'm cold.
She whirred. How about you? I asked the father.
I'm hot.
He said. And you? I asked what seemed to be Elspeth's twin younger brothers. We are at a temperature that could be considered adequate for our capabilities. Oh, I said, patting him on the head. That's nice.
Now then,
Said Elspeth quickly.
let's go home. I have so much in my life I want to show you, Lewis.
The family house looked like a giant circuit board. It was very different to our cosy Airbnb apartment on Earth, and I missed the fine views we had enjoyed. It felt odd being on the ground rather than up in the air, or in a cave. It was odd too, being physically inside a house that I'd only ever seen as a background on our Universal calls. I realised that for the longest time I had forgotten that it wasn't just a background screen, it was actually somebody's three-dimensional house that existed when we weren't there. Elspeth had moved me into her room, which was sparkly and warm and sweet, just like her, and I loved the fact that she had invited me into somewhere so personal to her, admiring all the belongings she had gathered over the years, especially the gigantic collection of robotic parts she had strewn all over the room. It was nearly perfect being back with Elspeth again. My heart and my arms had missed her so much. Once again we had worried that we might not have had the chemistry we had had on our last visit, or over the Universal. But once again we were wrong. Picking up where we left off had been surprisingly easy, as if our last in-person conversation had only just ended, and we had only just walked out of the same door to go home that morning. However, the walls were thin, and there was less privacy here, the air constantly filled with a whir of noise and activity that kept intruding on my thoughts, and reminding me that there were other people in this world. Even if I still only had eyes for Elspeth, my ears kept reminding me we didn't live in a vacuum. This house too was harder to navigate than the Earth house had been. It was full of buttons that seemed to do the most random things, and during the following week I found myself knocking them with my tail several times by accident. Oopsie woopsie! I cried as the washing machine suddenly turned itself on, just as the pet robotic cat had crawled inside it for a snooze. Or when I turned the jukebox onto some noisy channel just at an inconveniently romantic moment. Or accidentally turning on the family electronic car so that it drove itself out the garage and down the road, knocking down several Mechions along the way. One day the twins got scooped up by the vacuum cleaner I had accidentally switched on when looking for my breakfast, and it took me an age to disentangle them from the inner bag. But there isn't any dust on Mechion, I confessed to Elspeth.
You're all robots. You don't create dust.
She shrugged.
I always thought that too, but everyone seems to do it. I guess we need to be extra clean so that our circuits keep working.
Normality restored, I enjoyed a rather quiet family lunch, with 10 pairs of eyes staring coldly at me. The Mechion mother even brought a spare pair out of a bag so she could stare at me doubly hard. Struggling for something to say, while Elspeth grabbed another fire extinguisher just in case, I gabbled. "What a charming house you have here," I said.
"Have here? Till you came?"
stared the mother, her arms folded. All the better, I gulped to show off the impressively large and strong-looking bolts to show through her casing.
Our old house on Mechion 7's better,
moaned the Mechion father, as he retrieved the 84-slot toaster from my foot, where it had got entangled.
This one's too small.
"Is it?" I said as I fell over the robotic cat and knocked the twins into the microwave. I honestly hadn't noticed.
How about you just sit down, Lewis?
Asked Elspeth.
I'll get anything you need.
Mechion chairs were rather spindly though, and I found it hard to balance myself on them. Eventually I found the only way to sit delicately without falling off was to turn the chair inside out and perch ungainly on the top. Elspeth giggled and lost her nose. Carried on the Mechion mother, trying not to seem as if anything was unusual.
"What nodule or two?"
So, Lewis,
said the Mechion father, putting down his hollow paper.
what work do you do?
I'm in the entertainment clan, I confess. He raised an eyebrow by pressing a button.
Oh, you mean you're a clown?
He said.
I never would have guessed.
Not exactly, I started. Elspeth filled in for me.
He's a really funny comedian, Dad. People pay lots of money to laugh at him on Ziggurar Street.
He looked me up and down.
I should imagine most people do that for free,
he said.
You know, my daughter has a most respectable job here. She works in robotics.
Yes, I said. She's very clever with her hands. It looks a very precision-orientated job. One of the twins coughed. To be honest, sitting down looks like a precision job to a Clandis prod. I tried not to show my feelings, but must have pulled a face as Elspeth leapt to my defence.
We don't all need to be good at the same thing now, do we? Just think what a boring universe it would be if we all had the same employment.
"Oh, I shouldn't think a universe with clandestines in it is ever boring,"
added the mother. Elspeth politely changed the subject and tried to tell her family all about our trip to Earth.
Do you remember the snow, Lewis?
She grinned and tried to explain the idea of seasons to a shocked parent.
"I don't believe it,"
said her mother.
"What a ridiculous notion. Why have a planet that revolves at all? These newfangled planets, why can't everything just stay still the way this new one does?"
I don't think they created it that way,
confessed Elspeth.
I think it just revolves naturally. This planet did too originally.
Well, I think it's daft,
said her father.
Why not terraform the planet and have done with him?
Because Earth likes to do things differently, Dad. Technology isn't as big there as it is here. Technology is very big on Ziggurar 3, I had, sensing a part of the conversation I could finally join in with. I've become very interested in the amount of crystals we use. It really is amazing how all that solar energy from the three suns can be captured in something so small and yet so useful, just found on the ground where the liquid from the middle of the planet is oozled up and cooled. Even the Earth has a huge supply of crystals, and they only have one sun.
What a very archaic way of doing things,
flashed through Mechion father, a look of horror across his face.
Next you'll be telling me the Earth still uses fossil fuels.
I confess.
Now, Dad,
said Elspeth, looking concerned.
It isn't good to look down your nose at other cultures. If you keep doing that, it'll fall right off one of these days.
Your nose that already, though, don't you, Dad? I laughed into an echoing void. Wondering why the room had suddenly grown silent.
This isn't going to work, is it?
He sniffed.
You two are new. Two different planets. Two totally different cultures. I don't see that you've got anything in common. I knew you should never have written off about ridiculous dating site.
It's not ridiculous,
said Elspeth, her eyes bulging.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm in love. We're in love.
"I won't put battery packs on the table,"
Mechion mother sniffed.
"Give that Clandestine a bath and he'd probably put crystals and fossil fuels in it."
Elspeth looked as if she was about to cry and uttered a strange humming noise.
And another thing, you're becoming far too emotional,
sniffed the father.
In my day, Mechion was seen with a word.
Elspeth rushed off upstairs, leaving me alone. tea, missus, I stammered, not sure of what else to say. Would anybody like any more? I leant back in my chair and knocked another button, and the wall opened up, leaving the outside world staring at us, especially the Mechion mother in her curlers.
I don't know why you're here,
snapped the Mechion mother a day later, scuttling into a cupboard to avoid an accidentally rampaging tea's maid.
What do you want with our daughter anyway? Filling her head with nonsense about starting a new life together. It's the old one here she needs to think about. Mechions never detach from their family unit. I could trace my ancestors to several million places, not least because we all still live down the same street. The same with Elspeth's father's side. They all live across the street. There's a house already marked out for her next door when she meets the right Mechion boy and settles down.
No, Mother,
said Elspeth gently.
That's the life you want for me, not the life I'm going to have. They're not the same thing at all. Besides, there are no Mechion boys who look at me. They all say I've got my head screwed on the wrong way. They're probably right.
She sighed.
It does feel a bit loose, but it's the only head I've got, and I want to use it to do things with my life, starting with meeting the right person who'll help me to do them.
She held my hand.
Nothing good will come of dating aliens,
she huffed again.
Mark my words, you barely know him.
On the contrary,
sniffed Elspeth.
Lewis is the only person who knows the real me, who sees me for more than just my circuitry.
I'll look after her, I smiled. Don't you worry. But as I reached over to pat Elspeth's hand, I accidentally knocked another button, causing the oven to suddenly switch on and attach itself to the Mechion mother.
Ooh dear,
she said, her head ablaze.
Do you know, just suddenly, for the first time in my life, I'm actually warm, not cold. Oh wait,
she said as her carpet lit up with smoke and she began to sizzle.
I think we'd better go out today,
said Elspeth to me quickly as she put out the flames from her mother's head.
Let me show you the sides of Mechion 8, Lewis.
Been showing out for a long time, a very long time,
hissed the mother, her head still singed with smoke. I traipsed behind my girlfriend, feeling sad. I've messed everything up, I know. I'm sorry, I said to Elspeth's departing figure as she hastened out of the house. Your family hate me. I don't think I've got much of a future on Mechion 8. It wasn't built for Clondersprot. Everything has to be so precise, and I'm sort of the opposite of precise. I'm more after size, I added for good measure. I tried not to meet her gaze, afraid that I would see the same cold, robotic look of disdain with which her family had greeted me.
Nonsense,
giggled Elspeth, as she lost 3 limbs in quick succession.
That was hilarious. And I'm sorry, Lewis. I forgot we might have trouble in our little house. It really wasn't built with Clondersprots in mind. Even with all our planet's technological progress, our town planners hadn't really got the ideas of other species into their heads yet.
But how could you love me? I wailed. I'm so ungainly. I'm clumsy. Elspeth smiled.
I've spent my whole life in training to be precise with my movements, and it bored me rigid. But you haven't. My life is so rigid and structured, but with you it feels as if anything can happen. And usually does, to be fair.
I grinned. With you my life finally has structure. How did I ever cope without you? Elspeth grinned. How did I ever cope without you? I'm so glad you could be here, Lewis. I so badly wanted to share my life with you, for you to see what things are like for me here. I can't wait to see what life is like on your planet too. I sigh. Suddenly it seems more complicated though, seeing you leading your life. The last trip was all about what new life we could have together one day. This one, though, feels more like an insight into the sort of life I'd be taking you away from.
I think that's why the ID plan it that way,
said Elspeth thoughtfully.
Not everyone can cope with being long distance. These 3 visits are all about making sure we're tough enough to go through with it.
She looked up at me.
Are we, do you think? Tough enough?
Yes, I said, taking her hand. We've been through some pretty tough things in our lives already. But what about your family? They won't want you to leave.
They're not going to stop me,
said Elspeth grimly.
My circuits are arranged now. My life is my own. And we can still visit home.
Oh yeah, I thought. I could see how well that would go as I turned up every few months. After a while they probably wouldn't let me onto the planet anymore. Still I bit my tongue and tried not to say anything so that I didn't ruin the moment. Out the corner of my eye I could see that Elspeth was biting her tongue too. Part of it came detached, in fact, which she didn't seem to notice. It all seemed so possible on Earth, I sighed, when we were enjoying Christmas and watching the snow cover the planet, making everything look fresh and new, when no one else was involved but the two of us. But here our problems just seem to have magnified. I look up at her sadly. I can't separate you from your family, Elspeth. They need you, far more so than they're letting on, taking you from people who clearly love you in their own way. That's not what true love is.
No, don't say that,
said Elspeth sadly.
It really isn't their decision, it's mine. I've given enough to them, and I can still help them from afar. The universe really isn't so big that I can't rush back to be with them when something happens. This isn't a decision I made lightly. I thought long and hard whether to join the ID side. I don't want to stay on this planet for the rest of my life. Ever since I was created, I've been dreaming of a future away from here.
I smile thinly. If you're sure that's what you really want.
Of course,
said Elspeth. But even though she was the robot, not me, I could hear the hint of hesitation in her voice. Even so, we enjoyed the rest of that day, and the rest of that visit, just as we enjoyed any time when it was just the two of us, with no one else around to worry about. We stayed out the house as much as we could, Elspeth taking me to all the Mechion 8 tourist sites. The Eiffel Tower, a dazzling construction of metal and circuitry that was the tallest living building in the universe. The Empire Weight Building, an impossibly balanced construction of bricks built at impossible angles. The non-leasing Tower of Pizza that was impossibly straight and reached up to the next planet. Really Big Ben, the clock tower that made sure all of Mechion 8 ran to the same nanosecond timing. Circuit Henge that had a different equinox for every day of the week in dazzling colours. Finally, the Straits of Gibraltar that were, well, really straight, I guess. Oddly enough, I felt less of a tourist when out sightseeing than I did in the family home, where I felt like a complete and utter stranger. At first it was a relief to be outside, being a couple again, but after a while it began to be impossible to ignore the conversation. I knew we had to have.
Are we right to do this?
We asked each other, again and again.
Yes,
we told each other, repeating it as often as we could, whenever the other's doubts began to form. But behind the words, even I could tell that a moment of doubt had crept into our relationship.
I wish I'd just accept you for who you are and allow me to live the life I want,
said Elspeth one day.
This fighting is such a drain on the batteries.
Mine too, I confessed, and I don't even have any.
Oh, Lewis,
said Elspeth, giggling so hard a leg fell off.
You'll make me lose my head one day, and then what will I do?
I don't know, I confess. I would hate to see you without a head. You are the best head of anyone I ever met.
Will we ever get to have our life together, do you think?
I hope so. Later that week, we went through the ordeal of saying goodbye all over again, one that seemed more final this time somehow, even though we still had one more trip paid for, with Elspeth booked to visit Cigaris free.
I'm sorry, Lewis,
Elspeth said at the shuttle station.
I know this wasn't how we planned it. I really don't want to see you go.
What about them? I asked.
They'll miss you too,
said Elspeth.
In their own way.
On the platform, Elspeth's family were having a party.
Yahoo!
Said the Mechion mother, dancing with a pet robo-cat, while the Mechion father threw confetti in the air, and the Tins waved their arms in triumph.
Wait, Lewis,
said Elspeth, trying not to notice, reaching into the box that covered her chest and breaking off a piece of what was inside.
A piece of my heart was yours forever. Keep it till we meet again.
But don't you need it to function? I asked, horrified.
Not till old age. It's a spell that only starts working in my 3rd century. I can't function without you anyway. I don't want to live that long without you,
Elspeth said. I don't have any body parts to give you, I said helplessly, but I know that you already have all of my heart. The Galumphary, taking me to the shuttle terminal, started moving, so I leaned out of the window to kiss her, and Elspeth's head came off in my hands, her body running down the platform until she caught up and managed to catch it.
You see,
Elspeth grinned.
I said you made me lose my head one day.
Despite her family's best attempts, Elspeth and I carried on talking over the universal, as in love as ever. We also wrote long letters, me in my large childish scrawl, and she in a neat and perfectly formed robotic handwriting, laughing at our messages as the intergalactic postman finally delivered them a month or so on from when we had written them. At last the time had come for our third and final paid trip. It was big news on Ziggurat 3, as we still hadn't had all that many alien visitors, but this time it was to be very different, I thought to myself. My clan were very welcoming and busy making sure that we had a small part of the entertainment clan designated just for us, properly decorated. We had caused quite a stir at the ID offices too, being their longest running match, and were quite the intergalactic celebrities. This felt like extra added pressure though, as aliens everywhere seemed to be debating whether we should stay together or not. Really though, it wasn't anyone's business except our own. Finally the shuttle arrived on Ziggurat 3, and a nervy but excited Elspeth got out, shielding herself from our 3 sons as best she could.
Is that you, Lewis?
Called Elspeth.
It's so bright I can't see.
You're here! Cried 1,000 Clandesprods at the station, as they whistled, cheered, hooted, yelled and applauded.
Oh,
Elspeth blushed.
you brought your friends with you, Lewis. That's nice.
They are my friends, I said quickly. Well, some of them are, but most of them I've never met before in my life. It's just that we don't get many visitors here. You're quite a celebrity. Isn't she small? Asked one.
Isn't she robotic?
Asked another. I can see right through her body parts, said a third. It's not natural. Isn't she frozen? Just a bunch of metal and circuitry like that? She'll catch a death of cold even on this planet, said the fourth. I've knitted her a scarf. Back, please, said the Clandesprod chief organiser. Give the poor Mechion girl and her boyfriend some room. But that was easier said than done, with so many curious Clandesprods around, and the trip back to my cave was quite an ordeal, with hundreds of bodies who all wanted a glimpse of us. Let me help you with your bags, miss, said one Clandesprod near us. No, let me, said a second. It was my idea first, said a third, tugging at her bag until it was a loud rip and Elspeth's belongings spilled out.
Oh no,
cried Elspeth.
Don't let me lose my head again.
And we ran off to retrieve the robotic parts she brought with her that were running down the road. Literally. It's all right, I said, catching it. I won't let you lose your head. I still have a piece of your heart too. We smiled at each other, and it was like the sun coming out on a winter's day, which was especially weird given that I had never experienced a winter on this planet of 3 suns before travelling to Earth. I just wanted a quiet, cosy first night, but the entertainment clan had insisted on doing something special, and our cave had been decked out for a party to celebrate Elspeth's arrival. For everyone else it was a friendly, convivial night, full of fun and laughter. Lots of Clandesprods found it very amusing making Elspeth laugh, and seeing if her limbs really did come off, each one thinking that they were funnier than the last. Most of them were polite giggles, though, I knew, and she saved a special laugh just for me, which made me go weak at the knees, even after all this time, and making me feel not unlike a Mechion myself. I knew her well enough to know she wasn't so sure. I understood. I'd ached to have Elspeth to myself for so long. I hated having to share her with so many people. However, I also enjoy being the centre of attention on my home world for once, and the chance to show her off to people I had never even met. Look at that Clandesprod, I heard people whisper. Who would have thought such a plain type with such ugly spots could pull such a pretty Mechion? Finally, after several hours of mirth and merriment, Elspeth whispered in my ear.
This has been rather lovely, Lewis. I was half afraid your clan would turn out to be like my family, cold and robotic. But isn't it time for them to go home now? I've been longing to spend some time together, just the 2 of us.
Oh, I said sadly, this is their home. This is just the entertainment clan here tonight. You should see who's lined up to meet you tomorrow. There's the organisation clan, they arranged to see you next. Then there's the Explorer clan, they're really curious about you. The Scientific clan want to have a word with you about robotics. The History clan want to discuss Mechion's origins. The Nature clan want to discuss flora and fauna. And the Pedantic clan want to discuss the minutiae of road markings with you. They say it's very important.
What happens then?
Joked Elspeth. Then we have lunch, I said. The Culinary clan are fascinated to learn about some of your Mechion recipes. They've had a go at creating the food you eat, but we're not sure about whether it will taste right or not. Just then, one of the younger Clandesprods came up to Elspeth. Please, she said, her big eyes peering out from under her oversized spots, don't take Lewis away from me. Not before the end of the story. He's been telling me this really long saga every night, and I need to know how it ends. Someone else can finish it, I said, embarrassed. Much better than I ever could. It's not the same, she sighed, and waddled off to play. The head of the entertainment clan, a wizened old Clandersprod, came over and greeted us. You've chosen well, Elspeth, he smiled. Lewis here is my protégé. When I'm dead and buried, and in the great hereafter, he's the perfect Clandersprod to take up my job and keep the cave together. Oh, I said, embarrassed, you have much better candidates than me. I'd hate that job, it's not me at all. All that responsibility, it's not for me. I just want to laugh with people. Nonsense, said the Clandersprod. This place would fall apart without you. I mean, who else can I ask? Your clan needs you. You belong here. Elspeth is welcome too, of course.
He's very gifted, and I'm very lucky.
Elspeth agreed, but she looked kind of sad. A whole queue of Clandersprods then came up to say hello. And then, because there were so many of them, and Elspeth was only on the planet a few days, they all queued up again, ready to say goodbye. Elspeth sighed.
I just want to be with you, Lewis. I don't want to be a performing earth seal, even though I know you snore like one.
We will, I said, in time. It's just I've told my whole clan about you. Most of the planet, in fact. They're all rooting for us, you see. They were too. We couldn't move for people telling us, well done you two, keep it up, you make a really nice couple, and that our love was inspiring and out of this world. Poor Elspeth, though, born on a world where everyone kept to themselves, wasn't used to the extra scrutiny, and I could tell it was driving her scatty. Sensing her need to escape, I took her out to the beauty spot of Zigguris-free, our only stretch of water that wasn't evaporated by one of our suns, sheltered as it was by a number of caves of just the right size. I had discovered it during my youth, and it had become my meditative spot when in trouble, and when my clan had got too claustrophobic for me, which between them was most of the time. I came to realise now, noticing the patch of rock that had been moulded to my shape after so many years of sitting on it. After chit-chat admiring the beauty of the landscape, Elspeth turned to me, more worried than I was used to seeing her.
Don't Clandersprods ever switch off?
Elspeth said when we were alone.
Are they always this friendly?
Oh no, I said, as the beauty clan arrived out of nowhere to take her feet off and give them a pedicure. Some of them are much friendlier.
Don't think I'm not grateful,
Elspeth said.
especially after the reception we got on my planet. But I don't have any space to think. Even in your cave I thought we might get some time to ourselves, but everyone was there, staring at us the whole time. We couldn't do any,
No, she grinned. A thought splayed across her features.
How do any Clandersprods, without any privacy?
I think there is a tiny sex cave for that sort of thing, but we don't do it very often, only at preordained times when the clan has a vacancy.
Is there a privacy cave, by any chance?
Asked Elspeth. Oh yes, I said, but I'm afraid it's fully booked up for the next year and a half. They only allow 30 Clandersprods in at any one time, so it's nice and quiet.
Right, that does it.
An exasperated Elspeth took me by the hand and led me back to where her private shuttle was parked.
At least no one else is meant to be allowed in here.
It was a tight squeeze getting inside, but at least we were together, and in no time at all had fallen back into our routine. Me being clumsy, her giggling, me catching her limbs, her laughing harder, me accidentally getting stuck in the doorway, her managing to free me.
That's more like it.
Elspeth laughed after a routine where I did an impression of her mother still being cold in the middle of a volcano.
Now I remember why I love you. I was beginning to forget with all that noise going on, and all those people.
I never forgot, I said, sitting with her by the window where the duck pond was. This is our last paid-for trip, though. What do we do next? I don't fancy going back to your planet, and I doubt you'll want to come here again.
Let's get away,
said Elspeth dreamily.
The earth was nice. Let's go back there again.
A sudden thought crossed her mind.
The trouble is, though, if I were to leave here, I wouldn't have a leg to stand on.
One of hers conveniently fell off just then.
It's getting the parts of an alien planet, you see. How I want to be footloose and fancy-free,
she said as her leg floated off down the river, and I picked it up and unthinkingly screwed it back on for her.
Thank you, Lewis,
she said.
You were always rescuing me. What would I do without you?
What would I do without you, I said, sighing, as she saved me from walking into a wall. I'm glad one of us has got the head screwed on. Elspeth's head began to lean to one side just then at an alarming rate. In a manner of speaking, I added, as she screwed it back up again.
We have to get away, Lewis.
She said, through teeth so gritted that half of them came loose.
We just have to. Only it doesn't feel as if you can live with me on my planet, and I don't feel I can live with you on yours. They both seem alien to each other, even though we seem so right to each other. I'd hope we'd make our own world, whatever planet we were on, but it feels like together we'd just be two misfits on the world we didn't fit into, instead of one.
Maybe that would be enough, I asked. At least we'd have each other.
Most of the time it is,
said Elspeth, smiling.
But life and love isn't just the two of us, it's other people. We don't live in a vacuum.
No, I replied, even if you do snore like one.
Besides, what would we do for money? We'd have to pay to be together ourselves.
We can make money wherever we go, I said. Everyone needs robots, and you can make quadrillions. Plus I'm good at making people laugh. Together we could, I don't know, make a robot that tells jokes and program it with all our best ones. That would be funny.
I would enjoy programming its mind.
She laughed.
Oh, I would have to program it with your walk to make it really funny.
We both laughed hysterically, the tension of the visit easing. I'm glad we're still at the same old chemistry, I add.
Never doubt it,
Elspeth said.
Take it from a scientist. If any compounds had that much chemistry and controlled conditions on Mechion 8, there would be an explosion.
I hugged her tight. For all our difficulties, I'm so glad I found you, I said. Whatever happens next, I wouldn't have missed this or my time with you for the world. Any world.
Not you,
whispered Elspeth.
Just think, out of all those quadrillions of people on the 11 planets in all of space and time and multiple parallel dimensions, we found each other. How incredible is that?
She looked up at me sadly.
We don't have a future like this, though, do we? All this time I was just being illogical thinking it could work, just the way we were.
Usually I was the one to talk her out of it, to be gloriously impractical, as only Clandesprods could be. But the moment was too real for me to be anything less than authentic. I feel right, I stammered, admitting to myself for the first time what I had known all along, but not wanted to admit. But then love wasn't meant to be logical, and I really do love you, with all of my heart, my magical girl. Elspeth sighed, her motors whirring.
As I do you, my enchanted boy.
We held each other tight, as if we were afraid of letting go.
One thing I meant to tell you, though. Something that might change things.
You're not pregnant, I asked, worried about what a Clandechion baby might look like, and how often it would need changing. When I realised I knew nothing about how Mechion reproductive systems worked, I looked at her sitting by the pond. All stagnant, I asked worriedly.
No, silly. Nothing like that, it's more that... Oh dear,
said Elspeth suddenly mid-hug, her head slumping forward at a weird angle. Oh no, I said anxiously. Did I hug you too tight? Sorry, Lewis, Elspeth slurred. I think it's the sunlight. Playing up with my circuits. Mechions weren't built for all this sunshine. Then she turned herself off, the life disappearing from her body, until just one tiny power source was left in her eyes. I was so used to seeing them, awake and blinking, that to see them dimmed was beyond terrible. Alarmed to the state of panic, I dragged her to the medic cave as fast as I could. Luckily it wasn't far. A number of anxious Clandesprods looked on as I dropped her onto one of the beds and asked for help. Only none of our doctors or scientists knew anything about Mechion biology. Desperate, I consulted the universe and surrounded Elspeth with as many ice packs as I could find, a gift from Earth who provided us with our water in return for the solar energy we exported, and untightened her screws with the aid of a screwdriver. I pushed her buttons as many times as I could, desperately pressing Ctrl-Alt-Delete to turn her off and on again. I ran every diagnostic test I could think of. I even plugged her into the Clandesprod computer to fire her up from a different power source, praying that the delay wouldn't have short-circuited her personality or her memories, or anything that made my Elspeth so unique. Time and time again her face stayed blank, as if she was just another robot I'd got out of a box, rather than someone I had spent so much precious time with. When I had run out of practical, sensible things to do, I resorted to what I would do if she had been a Clandesprod, and pressed my lips to hers, giving her the kiss of life, hoping illogically to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on her. Finally, eventually, to my utter delight, my girlfriend blinked into life again, and I was relieved to see that her eyes were still in the shape of hearts. "Elspeth?" I asked anxiously, eager to know if her personality had survived the time in stasis.
Oopsie woopsie,
She said woozily, laughing at the shock of my reaction. "I thought I lost you," I said, smothering her before realising that it probably wasn't the logical thing to do to someone who had just overheated in front of me, and laying her back gently on the table.
what happened?
She said woozily. "We got cut off," I said. "I think it was the sunshine, and it was horrid. I'm never going to ever let it happen again." Elspeth recovered quickly during the rest of her trip, and we made sure to keep out of the sun. The rest of my cave clan was as worried about her as I was, and gave us lots of space. It was exactly what we needed, since Elspeth had first got here, but it had come too late. I realised, sadly, that it was just too dangerous for her to stay here with me, just as it was too dangerous for me to stay with her. When the time came to leave, she was firing up on all cylinders, which was a relief, even though I secretly hoped that she would be too poorly to travel anywhere ever again, would have to stay with me forever. But that was selfish, I knew. She had a life, and I was just a part of it, even if it was a very big part of it. I had no right to be all of it. When the time came to go, Elspeth gave me another big hug and whispered in my ear, "I've been thinking, Lewis, and trying to be logical about this.
I have a present for you. Well, it's more of a proposition really, but it involves a present. The other Kindness rods have been helping me with it in secret. It really is amazing, all these Kindness rod crystals. It was just what I needed to complete her, to perfect her. I really don't know what she's ready for."
She produced the robot version of herself that she had been working on ever since our trip to Earth. Only it looked different, even more like Elspeth if that was possible. The real Elspeth pressed a few buttons, and the robot her curtsied. "Lewis, my old liege," it barked as it sparked into life. "Nice to meet you, Cobbler, and a top of the morning to you. I've just been down the apples and pears for a tin of beans. I spent so long at the queue at the umbrella stand it felt like a fortnight. Oh, and by the way, I fancy you rotten." "Pardon?" I said, blinking.
"Oh, sorry,"
said Elspeth quickly.
"I think I've turned on the eccentric English button on by accident. Have a try now."
Elspeth's eyes turned to hearts, and she giggled.
"Hello, boyfriend,"
it said.
"I love you so much I think my head is about to fall off."
I grin at the accuracy, but then reality hits, and my face falls. "I see what you're doing," I said to my girlfriend sadly. "You're setting me up with a consolation prize. You know that you can't be with me, but you're too kind to abandon me, so you're creating a robot of you I can keep. She really is very like you, and I'm very grateful for all that hard work. But really, she's just a robot. She's not my Elspeth. Nobody else is my Elspeth. So that sack full of bolts could ever compare to the 3 dimensions of being with you. I'm better off talking to a real, but disembodied voice at the end of a universal for the rest of my life, and just have a poor substitute of you."
"No, silly,"
said Elspeth, reaching into a bag.
"that's not what I've been doing at all. This is what I was about to suggest to you, and I killed over. Here's a second robot I made earlier."
She pressed a button, and a second, bigger, purple with roulette spots robot burst into life, doffed an imaginary cap at me, and promptly fell over. "Oopsie whoopsie," said Robo Lewis, picking itself up. "Legs are still new." I stared in shock. "But it's me." She grinned.
"I know. I mean, it's totally me,"
I said, walking all the way round it. "In every detail."
"I know that too.
Elspeth grinned.
I've had a lot of time to study you on our free visits."
I frowned. "Then that's worse. You're planning to send our robots off on a new adventure together, aren't you? Because we can't be together. That's what you're trying to tell me. So at least one version of us gets to have a happy ending. But what's the point if that bright, brilliant future is only going to be enjoyed by someone thinking nuts and bolts? For all that effort, we might as well have played a computer game and given our avatars a happy ending." I pout unconsciously. As happy as I would be for them, it still wouldn't be us. Not really.
"I know that too. For 3.
Elspeth said, taking me by the hand.
Which is why I've given them both our memories. I've recorded every word we've ever spoken to each other about anything and put them all inside our robotic brains and attached a bunch of Clandesprod crystals that will recharge themselves for unnatural lifespans, and I've given them the ability to learn and adapt. That they will know everything we know, practically.
She smiled at me.
We've done ever such a lot of talking, so there was a lot of research for it to learn from. Sometimes I feel as if I know you better than I know myself.
Oh, great, I huffed. We've got 2 robots that remember everything, that can run off together while we're stuck living our lives on our own planet. And that makes it better how? Elspeth comes up close to me and reaches up to my ear to whisper.
They don't run off together, silly. We do.
We do? I wasn't quite taking it all in.
You and I both have duties, responsibilities, ties to our planets that we can't break, right? But the people we leave behind don't need the real us, not the way we do. We've often said that all our lives, those around us, have only ever known a part of us, the versions of us they wanted to see. Well then, let's give them that version of us. Our robots can still carry out everything we used to do, fulfill every function, hold every conversation that we would have had. To all intents and purposes, they'll be the responsible, dutiful little Clandesprod and Mechion that we were. But that's not who we really are anymore. They get to survive. We get to live.
She held my hand.
You changed me, Lewis, by allowing me to be my real self, my full self, for the first time in my life ever. I hope that I changed you too, the same way, at least a little. As for us, the real us, we'll be free to go anywhere we like, any planet you like. And I have so many spares from making my robot, or having enough new parts for centuries.
The realisation of what she was saying hit me, and I was desperate to let my hopes fly away with her. But I struggled to stay grounded, logical. But won't our plans and families be sad that they've got the robots and not us? Elspeth whispers in my ears again. They'll never have to know. In the background, the robot version of me had just set the curtains on the shuttle alight. Oopsie whoopsie, he said, while the robot version of Elspeth got up to get a fire extinguisher, lost a foot, and giggled merrily.
What do you say?
Asked Elspeth quietly.
Should we just leave them to it and start a new life together? Right now.
After a moment's thought, finally I decide. I always said you were clever, I reply. I grin back at her, and together we push our robots out into the sun, and then I take her hand, and we quietly slip away in her shuttle, and take off into the stars, for goodness knows where, waving goodbye to our old lives with tears of relief. At last, after so long dreaming about it, we were finally getting to do all the things we had only talked about, things that no one else in either of our species ever got to experience, shooting off into the far distance to horizons unknown, and the next part of our lives. The Mechion and Clandesprod, who should never even have met, but who are now together, inseparable for the rest of our natural existence, and, who knows, maybe even beyond. For after all, Elspeth was mighty handy at repairing parts. Maybe she could repair mine too. So off we went, all the way out, the darkness this time, as we followed the sun and chased the spring that never ended, clumsily navigating our way through life and love together, one accident at a time, and giggling our way through it as best we could, for eternity. Being together, forever, impossibly, with the other being in the universe who had made the other of us feel that anything was possible. For after all, what else was there to love than this?